Hey, thank you for joining. Thank you for joining me today. My name is Christina Zamora. And first of all, I just wanted to thank everyone for putting this podcast festival together. I'm extremely nervous, so excuse me if I flub a little bit, but I just want to make this worth your guys' time. I know everyone's time is valuable. So anyways, today I want to talk about how Star Trek has guided me as I transition from male to female um, while raising three biracial kids. The values exposed on the show have given me a philosophy to follow. Um, One of the key philosophies that the main characters try to follow is the Vulcan principle of IDIC. That stands for infinite diversity and infinite combinations. The principle states that beauty, growth, progress, they all result from the union of the unlike. That we must learn to delight in our essential differences as well as learning to recognize our similarities. Additionally, the concept does not allow for hate, bigotry, and discrimination. Yet, before I delve more into what I want to provide a little bit of background onto how I was raised. Um, Growing up, I did not have the IDIC philosophy. I was taught that there was a correct way of living, from mainstream TV to church to even a lot of subtext in music. The philosophy was pushed towards me that to be different was to be a deviant. Yet internally, I felt very different than everyone else. The way I viewed myself on the gender spectrum did not line up to how, from everything else that I was seeing in society. I was taught that having feelings for anyone but the opposite sex was evil. That was a sin. That being different was something that needed to be corrected instead of celebrated. I did not want to go against society and even the very creator of the universe. Therefore, I suppressed who I was. It hurt me a lot to do that. I wanted to be a good person. And here I was getting all these messages that I'm a bad person just for the way I think and feel. So I pushed it down, and it led me into, I was very depressed for a long time. Just trying to fight it off, thinking that, just trying to be me was the devil. It's difficult to talk about. And so that's kind of how I went through life. I just, you know, figured that, well, I'm just gonna have to pray to God that, yeah, He takes away these feelings from me. And I just tried to erase everything that I was, just so I could go to heaven, and and just live a quote unquote good life. And then came along Star Trek. The show propagates a very different philosophy from that which I grew up with. As someone who felt out of place in society, Star Trek resonated with me because it celebrates different and progressive. The whole premise of the show is to seek out new life and new civilizations. I've always taken that to mean that it was about exploring different ways of living. The show is written by humans for humans, and so all the analogies that are presented on screen are different philosophies of life, how to live. And that kind of that always interests me, just to see, I was kind of sheltered growing up, a little bit kind of isolated from people. I was never like an army brat, but my family moved around all over, and so I went to different schools. And so, I didn't personally get like a lot of exposure to a lot of different people, because I just kept on I kept on moving, but I didn't get close to a lot of people. So for me, I really look towards, Star Trek, just to kind of just see what is possible out there, how a different way of living. And I started to frame the show as the exploration of who I am relative to others. And I very much enjoy how diverse the show is. The original series is visually diverse. It was heartening to see non-white characters as part of the main crew. And it just thinking about like in the 60s, in the 60s when the show debuted, you didn't see that. There was like an all-white cast, or if there was, normally, you'd see a person of color was like the villain, and or even later on, as the 70s and 80s, most of the time, a person of color was just, a trope. They were like, either the villain, or they had a very narrow set of traits, instead of being, one of the heroes, part of the crew, not just part, yeah, their race informs who they are, but also just being a normal person, doing good things, got to see Yahora out there, helping out, and Sulu and the rest of them. And it kind of provided an analogy for me a little bit, because just as someone who's Latinx, it's just that I could be part of that, of what's happening out there. It's not just, if you're white, a cis white male, that you're going to be part of the good guys. The next generation continues and expands on the exploration of self, especially when it comes to data. Being an android in a human civilization, he thinks differently. I very much identify with Data. When he decides to create a child in the episode The Offspring, he allows his child, later known as Law, to select their species and their gender. And eventually that child decides to be a human female. And as a parent, I've tried to allow my children to partake in whatever activities please them, so long as they are safe. I didn't push the concept of that boys don't play with dolls, or that it's only for girls. and I didn't try to restrict their clothing selection. Say, okay, this is for boys, this is for girls. So for me, I kind of took a little bit to that concept there of just trying to let them be who they were and who they are, instead of trying to come from the top down and telling them what they needed to be. And I think the show does really good at that. And it's the same thing for my daughter. I told her that she doesn't have to, be hemmed in by traditional gender roles. She, there's a lot of, expectations of how to dress, how to act, needing to be submissive. And I've tried to let her know that you don't need to be submissive to anyone. You're gonna assert, who you are, and let your thoughts and your hard work, your traits, let that be what you're judged on. And be who you are. Don't try to be what a group of what people expect you to be. And it's hard to come to those conclusions naturally. And I feel like Star Trek kind of shows that that different characters can be different ways. They don't have to be stuck in the traditional sense. As for me, I've also decided to take gender expression into my own hands as I've gone through with this transition. It hasn't been easy getting to that conclusion. For much of my life, I felt like Soren. Soren, for those not familiar, showed up in the episode called The Outcast. That episode features an individual coming from a quote unquote genderless society, but later identifies as female. Soren's society does not allow her to have these feelings. But while she's aboard the Enterprise, she gets to express those. And while on a mission with Commander Riker, she gets to be who she really is. And it's really nice that little scenery like that. It kind of reminded me of when I first started dating, and I got to be who I wanted to be. I was just cross-dressing at the time, but when I was out there with them, I felt like, I felt like I was actually being me, as opposed to what everyone else wanted me to be. Identifying internally as female myself growing up, it's a lot of society, even here, it punishes people who go against the norm. And the episode really resonated with me. Such a heartbreaking episode at the end. She isn't allowed to be herself. She has to be what society wants from her. And the ending scene, she's forced to give up her identity. And, a lot of people go through that. I've met a lot of cross-dressers that they just wish they could just be themselves, but they can't. And so, like, we hang out sometimes, and, they feel so excited just to be themselves, wear what they want, say how they feel. And then they have to go back to being restricted, like Soren was, going back to having to be within the box. And it's not easy, and I had to deal with that before too. And when I first seen the episode, it just felt so anticlimactic. It put a hole in my heart. You know, the whole episode to me was an indictment on all of society. Like, you know, she wasn't harming anyone, kissing Riker. But you know, that was outside how other people were, so she had to stop. She had to cut it out, and we're still there today. There's so many people I've talked to online that just they can't be who they are, or they face so many consequences because they lose friends, they lose family, sometimes respect at work, and it's just BS. And you know, sometimes I watch the episodes of Star Trek and I think, you know, if we got to live at least in the Federation in the 21st century, these people would get to be who they wanted to be. But we're not there yet. But it's a good ideal to strive for, I think. Excuse me. Later, I came to identify with the Trill. To me, they're a fairly good analogy to what it's like transitioning. The Trill are a species first shown in The Next Generation, but they're really explored in Deep Space Nine and later Discovery. For the uninitiated, they are an alien who has a symbiotic relationship with another that has the memories of the previous host. When the host dies, the worm is taken from one host and transferred to the new host where the memories persist. As I have transitioned, I very much feel like the old me has died and transferred over to a new body. I look back at my old pictures and I hardly look like that person anymore. Maybe I could find a picture for context. I should have did a screen share. This might not be big enough to see. It's the only picture I have on hand. See. Well, anyways, I'm one in the black right there. It's hard to see. I'm sorry. I just remembered to get that. I'm very nervous. But I have the memories of the old me, Santina. That's my legal name for now. But the new me, Christina, is a very different person. I still have some of my old traits, but they're expressed differently. I sometimes wonder what it'd be like if my late wife met Christina. The episode that comes to mind for me is the DS9 episode called Rejoined. In that episode, the Trill, Dax, meets the wife of a former host. I could only imagine how it would feel if I seen my late wife as Christina. She passed away 3 years before I transitioned. I'm sorry. We still loved each other when she passed away, but she didn't really see me like this. In some ways, when she died that day, Santino died too. I imagine that ultimately we wouldn't be able to be together anymore. Much like Dax decides that she can't get back together with the wife of the former host. Excuse me. But I still find myself watching that episode. Dax still exchanges a kiss with the wife of the. She has a former host inside of her, and um, that kiss it's so symbolic to me, just because of how it plays in my own life, and just it's the first on-screen kiss between two women on Star Trek, same gender. And so it also has like a you know, a lot of effect, just, Star Trek acknowledging that, there are people who, at least are showing, homosexuality on screen, even though they kind of shied away from it for a long time. It hasn't been easy going through this transition, but I'm heartened by the fact that the show continues to be progressive. I like showing the kids that you can contribute to society and have a life that is outside the quote unquote mainstream. For me, Star Trek Discovery's diverse cast featuring an openly gay couple, a lead that's a person of color, and trans individuals convey to me that, again, that you can be a hero still and still be LGBT. And that's still not out there very often. We're the trope still most of the time. Sorry. Yeah, so it's nice to see them, that it's there, that, you see Statmitz and Colbert kissing, and, it's not just one scene where, oh yeah, here's a real quick flash of it, but here's what a loving, a gay couple can have a loving relationship and still be, contributing good people. And I think that's what really, what people really look at the show that really love it. It has its flaws. It's not. There are things that could be better about it, but you know, there's critics that they say, oh, the show's pandering to the LGBT or something, and they don't understand that the show is finally starting to, really follow through on the principle of infinite diversity and infinite combinations. That, here it is, here's someone living a little bit differently, but they're still part of, the crew. Just like, and I think that's what it is about Star Trek, is that it's parallels, because the lessons that it's giving us is that you could contribute in society too. You don't have to feel like, well, you know what, I'm like this now, I'm gonna have to be, like on a lot of shows, it's just like, you're like the serial killer. It's like a lot of trans individuals, they're portrayed like all ugly. Like I'm not even sure of which shows that like show like a trans person just, not, dealing with being trans, but just living their life, helping solve the problems. And so I see Adara on the crew. She's helping solve the problems. And it's the same thing with seeing, Michael take the captain's chair. It's, you don't have to be a cis white male to take the lead, and that out there in society still, it's kind of like that. A lot of the main people who are running big companies and, who are the boss, they're cis white males. And a lot of shows still show that, the lead character is you know, is a white male, you know. And so it's nice to see that you don't have to be, you don't have to be that way. And that's what I try to show the kids when you know, I bring, you know, I pause the show and say, hey, look at that, you know, you could be in the captain's chair. They have biracial identity. I'm Latinx, you know, I may not look it visually, but my mom is from Guatemala, and my dad is Italian. And the birth mom for my 3 kids is Chinese. So, but visually they look Chinese, Asian. And being raised by a Latinx trans parent, such as myself, their journey is outside the mainstream. And one thing I try to push on them is that their differences isn't something that should be suppressed. Instead, that they should take delight in the fact that it gives them a unique view of the world. And they don't have to be confined to a stereotype. And for example, in Star Trek, Deep Space Nine, the journey of Nog and Rom are about a Ferengi living on a human space station. For those not familiar with the Ferengi, they're an alien species that comes from a civilization that values greed and exploitation and, you know, above everything else. In fact, most humans view them that way as well. So they also are stereotypically pigeonholed into that because of their visual, you know, what they look like on the outside. That's how people assume that they are on the inside. And you know, and yet the show goes on. As the show goes on, Nog and Rom are shown, and even Quark to an extent towards the end, are shown to be very different than stereotypical Ferengi. They are fully fleshed out individuals that don't conform to the expectations others have on them just based on from where they're from and what they look like. And a lot of people, that's kind of what happened. And I feel like there's a lot of that subtext in Star Trek as it has continued to go on, is that you know, you can't judge the book by the cover. But a lot of people will. But you know, and I think sometimes it's nice to get that encouragement. Sometimes I just watch the show for that and kind of encouragement, like, you know, you are more than your background. You're more than your sexual preferences. You're more than your gender identity. And I think that as a parent, that is something that I want them to be, because there's a lot of different views about, you know, them being, you know, visually Asian, that, you know, people are going to put them in certain kind of boxes, you know. My daughter being an Asian girl, you know, there's an expectation that she's going to be some submissive little flower, you know, just going to, you know, do whatever, you know, some guy wants her to do. And on her, that, you know, I've just tried to, again, push that idea on her that, no, doesn't matter what they think, you're going to be you. And don't let them try to categorize you in those boxes. And I kind of feel like I kind of want to get like at the roots also of why it's irrational to be counter to go against the infinite diversities and infinite combinations, and why that is like, how to describe it, why that goes counter to hatred and bigotry. I kind of want to touch back on that. It's such an irrational view in my mind that here we are as human beings. There's 7 billion of us. Each of us has unique brain chemistry, upbringing, just all, education. We come in with this whole different package of, traits, but, this mainstream view of, well, one path is the only path to go down. It's illogical, as Spock would love to say, because you can't put 7 billion, you can't ascribe one type of way of being to 7 billion people. And in fact, I think it's destructive to try to do that. Evolutionarily speaking, we have progressed as a species because we've had diversity in our biology, diversity in the way we think, diversity in our skills. And, it's that uniqueness, that difference, that it's not just, oh, that's different. It's nice, to, oh, okay, why don't we just put up with that person? Yeah, they're different than me. All right. No, it's a good thing to be different, because we need that to survive and thrive as a species. You see it all over Star Trek, even, Barkley, he's just like, he's kind of coded like he's autistic, and socially awkward. He has a lot of social awkwardness. The way he approaches things is unusual. And unfortunately, even some of the crew makes fun of him. They have little nicknames for him. They call him Broccoli. And people are like that. They will have little names for you. They will use, gay in a derisive sense. Use, someone being autistic, not as as a way of describing a set of behaviors, and to understand someone, but just to insult, especially online. And, it's something where you can't let those kinds of things, you can't be daunted by those things. So I think that, we watch, I love watching those different characters that Star Trek has, and Barkley saves the Enterprise. It's just, it's great to see that, because it's like, he kind of looks like he's kind of weird at first, you're like, oh, I don't know, and I think that for a lot of people, it's hard to relate to people who are different, because our brain is used to thinking like the way we do. So I think a certain way. And so it's easiest for me to assume that everyone thinks like me. But when I have to think about how someone else thinks that is completely different than me, I literally have to biologically do more work to process their frame of mind. And I think that's, a lot of people don't like to do that, because quite frankly, they're intellectually weak. They know their own way, and they believe that their way was the only correct way of going about a problem. And so they judge, usually pretty harshly. And sorry, I think that the sign of someone who is intelligent is that someone can understand that someone else can approach things a different way. and come to a different conclusion, and a lot of times a better conclusion. And yeah, we need that. If no one thought outside the box, we would be, our technology would be hundreds, if hundreds of years back. So it's, to me, I'm like, I try to push to the kids. We celebrate neurodivergency. We celebrate, people who have different identities, because they have a different way. They have that. It's a literal value that they can bring, a different way of living. They've experienced different things, and that's, you see Tilly, she's also kind of coded like she's neurodivergent, and in society, she would be an outcast a lot of times, even when she initially meets Michael Burnham, in Star Trek Discovery, she's very particular about her bed, and those kinds of things. A lot of people would be very not very understanding about that. They say, well, this is, they kind of look at Star Trek like a militaristic organization. Like, these are the rules, and if you can't, war is tough, and if you can't, conform to the very, to what is here, then you need to get out of here. But if we went by that mainstream view of running society, if Star Trek went by that, the ship would have been blown up. Tilly has saved the day. A lot of the individuals who are, coded differently have come together to save the day. And I think of like Alan Turing. He saved the day for, his code breaking, German codes, and they put him to death. Like that breaks my mind. Like, how further along would we have been if Alan Turing just lived a full life? And it's just, it's that difference. Difference is not bad. It's not something that's just okay or whatever. I guess someone else is different than me. It's good. And just guiding these kids through life that's out there. They have to walk around with me, and people known the old me. They say, they do their little whispering. Oh, that's the dad. That's the dad. It stings. And it doesn't really sting me as much as it, I worry about, the effect it has on the kids. That they have to deal with, being different, but it's, just to be, just to reiterate, it's just, this thing is something that you could turn the negative into a positive. And I feel like that's kind of, over and over again on, Star Trek. They show, the adversaries a lot of times. You're working with a former, Romulans, not Romulan, Cardassian spy, Garrick. He comes from Cardassia, and he's my favorite gay character, by the way. He's totally gay. I don't care what anyone says. Garrick is gay. He is super gay. Him and Julian are like living happily ever after in the future of DS9. I definitely ship. But Where was I? Okay, so anyway, so yeah, and I think that even, that you can, even if you go off and you have a bad past, I think that's also something I try to show the kids that Star Trek is really good about, is that there's a path for redemption. Garrick redeems himself at the end. He enables, he opens the way for saving pretty much the whole entire Alpha Quadrant from the Dominion. Michael Burnham in Star Trek Discovery, was a mutineer, and a lot of people, I read the critics online, they say, well, why didn't they throw her in the brig? Why is it, a criminal, how come a criminal is, leading, the ship or whatever, giving it a second chance? And I think it's important, this is what I try to convey to the kids. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to mess up. But there, there is a path going forward for you. You can still make up for it. It's not easy. Once you betray people's trust, when you're doing things that are shady. But I think that also kind of touches back on just forgiveness. That's another value that's kind of implicit in Star Trek, is forgiveness. We don't forgive, our friends. We don't make peace with our friends. We make peace with our enemies. Not sure which Star Trek one is that one, but that it's there. Somewhere. Someone will have it in the chat, maybe, who knows. But yeah, I think that a lot of people, even in the mainstream, they don't mean bad. It's just they've not been taught the right lessons. And so I think that, there's still things like that, like forgiveness and redemption. That we have to get back to on that. Now I'm losing my train of thought. I'm sorry. I was still thinking about Garrick and Bashir. And Kirk and Spock, of course. The original ship. But yeah. And I think that's kind of like a side thing that I think is kind of cool, is that Star Trek kind of paved the pathway for, that kind of slash fiction. I don't know if too many people are familiar with that, but there's a lot of stories where people get like characters like Kirk and Spock, which definitely, off on the side, they're together. But yeah, they kind of, I think that kind of brought together, this idea that and Star Trek is kind of stuck in the era that, it was produced. So like even in the 60s and 80s, even 90s, 2000s, they're still kind of leery about touching on LGBT issues. But there is a lot of subtext in a lot of the interactions that if those same episodes were written today and the characters related to each other in the same way, we would be like, oh, those two are totally, going to Bone Town Buffet. And so I think that, and I hope that in the future that Star Trek, is a little bit more explicit about that. I hope that they put a trans woman on Star Trek. I'm just saying, I'm available. I could just walk in the background. Just saying. But seriously, it's like we do need to show, all people from all different kinds of walks that can be part, and not just being a trill. I mean, just like a human, like a trans woman as a human being, I feel like that would be awesome. But I know they like to talk in analogies and metaphors and all that, but I would be freaking over the moon if I seen a trans woman on Star Trek. So that is something that hopefully we see it in the next season of Star Trek Discovery or Strange New Worlds, Prodigy. I don't know, something. Lower Decks #2, season 2. So yeah, because I want to see I want to see me on screen. I mean, I think it's cool that Adara's there, that Gray is there, but I definitely want to see a direct representation of I want to see more non-binary people. I want to see more queer people that do not fit comfortably in any kind of category. And yeah, I mean, there's definitely some room for growth and improvement on the show. The show has always, taken on, tough issues, far beyond the stars, took on racism. Is there, the stuff that's still going on today that needs to be cut out. Definitely need some episodes on these cops, they're a little overboard, need a little bit, especially in the United States here. Yeah, so we definitely still have some things that need to be addressed in Star Trek. I mean, it's great that they're saving the universe all the time, but it'd be nice to just kind of have a little bit more of those current day analogies in current Star Trek too. I don't see how Picard could take that, but do that. But I definitely think that there is things that can happen. More Asian characters. Hello. Now I could say, see, you're not just stuck in the engineering room like Harry Kim. No, he's an ensign, but he's kind of tucked away there. I don't know. In my ideal world, Ensign Kim was just like they did him wrong. They did his character wrong. He deserved a promotion. Jeez. Sorry, yeah, you see Ensign, he's still an Ensign 7 years later. Sorry, kids. This is Star Trek here. No. But but yeah, so definitely things that could be built on in Star Trek. And I have I guess I'm just kind of curious now as to how other kinds of LGBT stuff that other people have seen in the show, or questions or comments or anything like that. So I open the floor to you. Also because, that's pretty much the end of my spiel there. I could keep going, but, yes. Let's see here. Oh, I disappeared here. 1 moment. You got it. All right, so let's see here. Thank you for the compliments, people. See here. Yes, there's not too much happening in the comments there, so I'll fill in another 10 minutes. It's hard to know because, like, I wrote all this stuff, and then you don't know how long it's really gonna play for. But I think that I'll just go off on a couple of tangents here, and I'm gonna make the most of it. So bear with me, so to speak. Yeah. I'm blanking completely now. But yes, let's see. Hold on, I'm gonna check the comments real quick. So 1 second. Da, da, da. Lots of compliments. I very much appreciate it. No, 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 no. Okay. Are there any Trek parents besides data that you think show positive or negative examples to the LGBTQ? Well, I mean, the most obvious one I think is Statmitz and Colbert. Colbert. I want to say Colbert, but Colbert. I'm terrible at pronunciation. Trust me. They take in Adara. And I think that's beautiful to see that happening, because it kind of touches on this idea that especially for the LGBT, that we lose a lot of our family. Most of my family died, but a lot of people that I know, they lose friends, they lose family, like I said, and instead we kind of have to rely on our found family. And I think, that having, Colbert Statmitz taking in Adara there under their wing, being the parent for Adara is beautiful. And it's something that I try to tell the kids, because we have a very small family. It's pretty much just me and them. It's just immediate family, me and 3 kids. There's like maybe my sister. Yes, my sister. And so it's like family is not just something that's blood. I mean, family is the people who will love you, for who you are and how you live. And that's one thing I tell people online too sometimes, is that they have toxic family and they keep trying to win them over. It's because that's my mom, that's my dad, that's my cousin, all this kind of stuff. And to me, it's just like, you can't abuse yourself that way. You need to find your own crew out in the quadrant, and hold on, it's a good thing, this thing's doing that. But yeah, you got to find your own family out there, and so that concept of you find your own allies out there. And it's like you're out there, like I almost think of it like Janeway. She's out there, Mama Janeway. Out there just making alliances with whoever the hell will take her in. And that's how I am. I'm out there online, like, who wants to be my friend? Here I am. Here's Christina. And you accept me as I am. Hey, what's up? You're part of the group now for me. And that's definitely something I want them to know, is that there are other people who are like, no matter what kind of way that you are. I mean, everyone is unique in a sense that the assortment, like there's some unique combination, and I think that's the cool thing about the infinite diversity, infinite combination. There's the specific combination is unique, but there's a lot of different angles in which you can find someone that will identify with what you're going through. It's like, for me, I find people who are trans, I find people who are gay or bisexual. I'm bisexual, but I find people who are bisexual. People who are queer. People of color. I don't care. As long as you're accepting of people. How they present themselves, and they're not harming someone else. I mean, So yes. And then there's some more comments here. I'm gonna take a look at here. So, okay, go over here. So yeah, any other questions or comments or something? I've got 5 more minutes to build. My mission has not ended yet. But yes, try to think of other lessons that I have taught them, because there's many lessons. Every day is a lesson out here with these kids. I even talk with them like we're in Star Trek. The X can confirm about this too. I'm like, all right, we're gonna set a course for 318 Mark 5, and and it has like relevance in reality. So I'm like, we're going 180 Mark 7 or something. So 180, we're going in reverse, turn around. So it's warp factor 10, we're running. Warp factor 1, we're slow. The car is the shuttlecraft. So I definitely push Star Trek at them. What does your necklace say? On this side, it says Star Trek. And then there's another side that it says nothing, but it's kind of cool. It says Star Trek on it. I had Star Trek earrings, but I couldn't find them in time. So I'll just have to show that off on Twitter or something. I don't know. Or Insta. But yes. No. Yes, I just think that if you see yourself as a logical being, then you're going to be open to all possibilities, because that's what a scientist is. Is you're open to any and all possibilities. No matter how remote they may be. And I think that's the same way you have to approach life. You have to be approaching it. Oh, this person is going about things differently than how I think and feel. They might be onto something. They may be psychopaths too. But yeah, so I definitely think that you want to make a little coalition and take on the Dominion forces out there, because they're definitely out there, and they're gunning for the Alpha Quadrant. But short from assassinating any Romulan senators, we're going to come together, all different walks of life, and we're going to push back, our right to exist, and so yeah, so I definitely think that the coalition of the, I always one thing I kind of always say is just like, I've always found the most intelligent people to be outsiders. And I think it's because you're not enmeshed inside of that group think. It's you see things, it's hurtful to be on the outside. I think for a long time I wanted to be on the inside, because I kind of thought like, oh, well, that's where everyone's at. That must be the most logical place to be, because if everyone's doing it. No, have you met people? People are crazy. And I think even though it's been a painful experience, orbiting the outside of, social groups or whatever, I think ultimately I'm kind of happy to have been able to be on the outside and have a unique perspective. And the people who have informed me the most have been the people who are kind of quirky. They're not the quote unquote most attractive person, or they're just, they have a different gender expression or, sexuality. And those people have been the most awesome people that I've met so far. And so I think that's something you should definitely, that being on the outside, being able to see the full picture, because you're not enmeshed in the picture. So yes, I think that's going to be, that's a good path forward to take. And as we wrap it up over here, I just want to say thank you for everyone coming out to watch me, giving me your time. I say it all the time, but time is like the most precious currency you can give, even more precious than gold pressed platinum, because it's so finite. You could be spending it, grinding on Star Trek timelines. But you come out here to come listen to me talk like a maniac for an hour, and I appreciate that. Getting to know me and, you know, my kids by extension and everything. And live long, prosper. Thank you for joining